She inherited a rusted yacht everyone told her to scrap, but when she climbed aboard with her son, she found a secret someone had died to protect. The marina smelled of diesel and salt. The gulls screamed over gray water. Heat shimmered on the docks like a mirage, bending the air above the weathered planks. The sky was the color of bleached denim, flat and endless. She parked her old sedan beside the auction office, air conditioner wheezing its last breath, her boy asleep in the back seat. His mouth hung open slightly, cheek pressed against the seatbelt. She watched him for a moment before stepping out into the heat. Bills waited at home. Eviction notice taped to the door. Fridge empty except for a carton of milk 2 days past expiration. His asthma had been flaring again. She'd stretched his inhaler as long as she could, but the refill cost $60 she didn't have. Inside the auction office, a man in a floral shirt sat behind a desk cluttered with marine catalogs and coffee-stained paperwork. He looked up, squinted at her through the sunlight pouring through the window. "You Hammond?" he asked. "Yes." He slid a brittle manila envelope across the desk. The edges were yellowed, the seal broken and retaped with scotch tape that had turned amber with age. "Congratulations, I guess. You're now the owner of the Evangeline. Dock B, slip 48. He pointed vaguely toward the docks. "Been sitting there since the 80s. Nobody's claimed it in decades." She stared at the envelope. Her name was written in faded blue ink across the front. Handwriting she recognized, her uncle's. "My uncle's boat? Used to be. County seized it for unpaid fees about 10 years back. No living relatives came forward. But your name was in the original registration as next of kin, so..." He shrugged. "It's yours now, if you want it. What's it worth?" He laughed short, dry. "Scrap value maybe $1,000. Maybe. Hull's compromised, engines shot. Interior's a biohazard. Most folks would pay to have it towed out and sunk." She felt something sink in her chest. "So it's worthless." "Pretty much." He leaned back in his chair. "But hey, free boat's a free boat, right?" She took the envelope and walked out. Outside, the wind smelled of copper and fish guts. Cicadas hummed in the live oaks that lined the parking lot, their song rising and falling in waves. She opened the car door. Her son stirred, blinking up at her. "Where are we?" he asked, voice groggy. "The marina. Come on, baby. I want to show you something." They walked the dock together, his small hand in hers. The planks creaked underfoot, gaps between the boards revealing dark water below. Boats bobbed gently in their slips, fishing trawlers, cabin cruisers, a few sailboats with furled sails. At the far end, nearly hidden behind a stack of old lobster traps and a rusted dinghy, sat the Evangeline. She stopped. The boat shimmered in the heat like something out of a fever dream. 40 feet of rust and decay. The hull was streaked with oxidation, turquoise paint peeling in long curls. One window was cracked, held together with duct tape. The railing sagged. A single frayed rope tied it to the dock, hissing softly as it rubbed against the cleat with each shift of the tide. A seagull perched on the cabin roof tilted its head, watching them with one black eye. "It's beautiful," her son whispered. She looked down at him. "It's a wreck, honey. But look at it. It's like a pirate ship." She smiled despite herself. "Yeah, I guess it is." They stepped aboard carefully. The deck groaned under their weight. She tested each step before putting her full weight down, half expecting the wood to give way beneath her. The cabin door hung slightly ajar, swollen from humidity. She pressed her shoulder against it and pushed. It groaned open with a sound like an exhale. Inside, the air was thick and stale. It smelled of oil, mold, and something faintly sweet, like dried tangerine peel left in the sun. Dust motes danced in the light filtering through the cracked window. The interior was small but surprisingly intact. Dark teak paneling lined the walls, warped and water-stained but still solid. A table bolted to the floor. 2 bench seats with cracked leather cushions. A small galley with a sink and a 2-burner stove crusted with salt. Maps hung in brass frames on the walls, their edges curled and yellowed. A ceramic coffee mug sat on the table, a brown ring dried inside it. A pair of binoculars hung from a hook beside the door. It looked like someone had stepped out for a moment and never come back. Her son touched the steering wheel, ran his hand along the polished wood. "Can it still sail?" "I don't think so, baby." He turned, eyes bright. But we could fix it, right? She didn't answer. She was staring at the captain's desk. In the center, perfectly placed, sat a single envelope, sealed with red wax. Her name written across it in the same faded blue ink. She crossed the cabin slowly, picked it up. The wax seal bore an impression. An anchor crossed with a compass rose. Her uncle's seal. Her hands trembled slightly as she broke it open. Inside, a single piece of paper. A note handwritten. Don't trust the buyer. Look below the engine. Finish what I started. Uncle Eli. She read it twice. Her son tugged her sleeve. What does it say? She folded the note carefully, slipped it into her pocket. I'm not sure yet. Outside, footsteps approached on the dock, slow, deliberate. She moved to the doorway, shielding her son instinctively. A man stood at the edge of the boat, hands in his pockets, watching her through mirrored sunglasses. Tan skin, polo shirt, boat shoes. He smiled, showing too many teeth. Heard someone finally claimed the old girl, he said. His voice was smooth, practiced. Name's Carter. I run the marina office. She stepped onto the deck, keeping herself between him and the cabin. Just looking around. Mind if I come aboard? I can give you the rundown on slip fees, maintenance requirements, that kind of thing. She hesitated. Something about his posture felt wrong, too casual, too interested. Not today, she said. I'm still figuring things out. He nodded slowly, smile fixed in place. Fair enough. Just so you know, there's a standing offer on this boat. $12,000 cash. Paperwork's ready whenever you are. I can have a check cut by end of business. $12,000. 3 months rent. Maybe 4 if she stretched it. New inhaler. Groceries. A buffer against the eviction. Who's buying? She asked. Local investor. Wants to restore classic vessels. He's been watching this one for years. Why didn't he buy it at auction? Carter's smile tightened. Timing issues. But he's serious. Offers good through Friday. She met his gaze through the mirrored lenses. Saw her own reflection staring back, small and uncertain. I'll think about it, she said. He lingered a moment longer, eyes scanning the cabin behind her. Then he nodded, turned, and walked back down the dock. His footsteps echoed on the wet wood, slow and rhythmic, until they faded into the sound of the water and the gulls. Her son tugged her hand. Are we keeping it? She looked at the note in her pocket. Don't trust the buyer. I don't know yet, she whispered. But something told her the boat wasn't done with her family. Not yet. The wind shifted, carrying the smell of creosote and gasoline. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell rang once, then fell silent. She locked the cabin door behind them and walked back to the car, her son's hand warm in hers. She returned to the marina at dawn. The air was cool and damp, mist clinging to the docks like smoke. The water was flat and gray, reflecting the pale sky. Gulls stood motionless on the pilings, waiting. Her son had stayed home with Mrs. Chun, the neighbor who sometimes watched him when she had errands to run. She'd told him she was going to the grocery store. She hated lying to him, but she didn't want him here. Not yet. Not until she knew what she was walking into. She carried a canvas bag with a flashlight, a crowbar she borrowed from the building superintendent, and a bottle of water. The note was folded in her back pocket. The Evangeline sat silent in its slip, rocking gently with the tide. The seagull was gone. No one else was on the docks. Just her and the sound of water lapping against hulls. She climbed aboard and unlocked the cabin. Inside, the air was cooler than yesterday, almost cold. She flicked on the flashlight and swept the beam across the interior. Everything was exactly as she'd left it. The mug on the table, the maps on the walls, the binoculars hanging by the door. But something felt different. She moved to the galley, opened the cupboards one by one, empty except for 2 mugs with faded anchor designs, a tin of instant coffee gone solid with age, and a rusted key hanging on a small brass hook. She took the key down, examined it. Old, heavy, teeth worn smooth. No label. She pocketed it and moved toward the stern. The engine room hatch sat near the back of the cabin, a square panel in the floor sealed with a padlock green with corrosion. She knelt, tried the key from the cupboard. It didn't fit. She sat back on her heels, frustrated. Mom! She jumped, spun around. Her son stood in the doorway, backpack slung over one shoulder. What are you doing here? She asked, heart pounding. Mrs. Chun had to leave early. She dropped me off. He looked around the cabin, eyes wide. What are you doing? She exhaled slowly. I'm trying to figure out what your uncle left me. Can I help? She hesitated, then nodded. Stay close, okay? He grinned and dropped his backpack. Together they searched the cabin. He found a drawer hidden under the bunk, stuck shut with humidity. She pried it open with the crowbar. Inside, a stack of faded photographs held together with a rubber band that crumbled when she touched it. She spread them across the table. Her uncle, young, maybe 30, standing beside a woman in a white sundress. Behind them, the Evangeline gleaming pristine under summer sunlight. Another photo, same couple, older now, standing on a beach at sunset. Another, her uncle alone, holding a fishing rod, smiling at the camera. Who's that? Her son asked, pointing to the woman. I don't know. But something about her face was familiar. The shape of her eyes. The way she held her shoulders. She flipped the last photo over. On the back, written in pencil, Sarah and me, July 1984. Sarah. Her uncle had never mentioned anyone named Sarah. Her son tugged her arm. Mom, look. He pointed to a narrow panel beside the galley sink, almost invisible in the wood grain. She ran her fingers along the seam. It gave slightly under pressure. She wedged the crowbar into the gap and pulled. The panel swung open with a sigh of old air. Inside, a metal toolbox sat wedged between pipes. She dragged it out, set it on the floor. The latch was rusted but gave way with a pop. Inside, a second key, a folded blueprint, and a leather journal bound with twine. Her hands trembled as she opened the journal. The first page read, Ship's Log, Evangeline, 1963. Her uncle's handwriting, neat, precise, the letters slanted slightly to the right. She flipped through the pages. Dates, coordinates, weather notes, cargo manifests, mostly mundane things, fishing equipment, supplies, personal effects. Nothing unusual until the final pages. The handwriting changed, hurried, less careful. August 14, 1985. They're watching the boat now. I moved it to Dock B. They won't find it unless they know where to look. August 18, 1985. Sarah left for Charleston today. I told her to stay with her sister. I can't risk them finding her. August 20th, 1985. If anything happens to me, tell Sarah the truth. The cargo was never stolen. It was saved. Her breath caught. She turned the page. A list. Names. Dates. Dollar amounts. And at the bottom underlined 3 times. Total value, EST $15 million. Her vision blurred. She read it again. $15 million. Her son leaned over her shoulder. What does that mean? She didn't answer. Couldn't. Outside, footsteps approached. Heavier this time, boots on wet wood. She closed the journal quickly, shoved it into her bag. Carter appeared in the doorway, blocking the light. Didn't expect to see you back so soon, he said. His smile was gone. Especially not with the kid. She stood slowly, positioning herself between him and her son, just looking around. He stepped inside without asking. His eyes swept the cabin, lingering on the open panel, the toolbox on the floor. You know, this boat's been sitting here a long time, he said conversationally. Lot of junk accumulated. If you need help clearing it out, I can arrange a crew. No charge. I'm fine. You sure? Some of this stuff's probably hazardous. Mold, asbestos, who knows what else. She met his eyes. I said I'm fine. He smiled again, but it didn't reach his eyes. Suit yourself. Just remember, offer expires Friday. $12,000. Cash. After that, you're on the hook for slip fees, insurance, all of it. Adds up fast. He glanced once more at the toolbox, then turned and left. She waited until his footsteps faded completely before she exhaled. Her son looked up at her. I don't like him. Me neither, baby. She picked up the blueprint, unfolded it carefully. It showed the yacht's interior in precise detail. Every compartment, every panel, every storage space. But in the engine room, someone had drawn a red circle around a section labeled ballast tank. Beside it, in her uncle's handwriting, the truth is below. She folded the blueprint and tucked it into her bag along with the journal. Outside, the mist was lifting. Sunlight broke through in pale shafts, turning the water silver. Cicadas began to hum in the trees beyond the parking lot. The air smelled of salt and gasoline and something faintly sweet, jasmine maybe, from the vines growing wild along the marina fence. She looked at the engine room hatch again. Tomorrow she'd find a way to open it. Tonight, she needed to understand what her uncle had been protecting, and why someone still wanted it buried. She returned at dawn the next morning, this time alone. Her son was at school. She'd packed his lunch, walked him to the bus stop, watched him climb aboard and wave through the window. Then she'd driven straight to the hardware store and bought bolt cutters. Paid with the last $20 bill in her wallet. The marina was silent except for the slap of water against pilings. A heron stood motionless in the shallows, watching her with ancient eyes. She climbed aboard the Evangeline and went straight to the engine room hatch. The padlock was old, thick, covered in layers of rust and salt corrosion. She positioned the bolt cutters, squeezed hard. The handles bit into her palms. The metal resisted, then gave with a sharp crack that echoed across the water. The padlock fell to the deck with a clang. She lifted the hatch. Rust flaked off in her hands, staining her palms orange. Below, a ladder descended into darkness. She could smell oil, seawater, and something else, something metallic and cold. She climbed down carefully, testing each rung before putting her weight on it. The metal was slick with condensation. The engine room was cramped and dark. A single porthole high on the wall let in a shaft of gray light. She pulled out her phone, turned on the flashlight. The beam swept across the space. The engine sat in the center, massive and dead, pipes snaking around it like arteries. Everything was covered in a layer of grime and salt. She found the ballast tank against the starboard wall, a steel cylinder bolted to the floor, about 4 feet tall and 3 feet wide. She knelt beside it, ran her hand along the seam. Someone had welded it shut. Not recently, the weld was old, covered in rust. But it had been done carefully, professionally. She pressed her ear against the metal. Silence. Then a faint sound. Something inside shifted when she tapped the side with her knuckle. Not water. Something solid. She searched the engine room for tools, found a crowbar wedged behind a fuel line. She worked the edge into the weld seam, leaned her weight into it. The metal groaned. She adjusted her grip, pushed harder. The weld cracked. She worked the crowbar deeper, leveraging it back and forth. Sweat ran down her back. Her arms burned. Then the panel gave way with a shriek of tearing metal. She stumbled back, breathing hard. Inside the tank, wrapped in layers of oilcloth and heavy plastic, sat rows of small wooden crates. Her hands shook as she pulled one free, set it on the floor. The oilcloth was brittle, crumbling at her touch. She peeled it back carefully. Gold coins gleamed in the flashlight beam. She stopped breathing, reached out, touched one. It was cold and heavy, stamped with an eagle and a date, 1879. She opened another crate. More coins. Then another, jewelry this time. Necklaces, rings, brooches set with stones that caught the light like fire. She sat back against the wall, staring. $15 million. Her uncle hadn't been exaggerating. Footsteps above, slow, deliberate. Someone walking the deck. She killed the flashlight, held her breath. A voice called down through the hatch. Hello? Anyone aboard? She didn't answer. The footsteps moved closer. She grabbed the crowbar, gripped it tight. Then the voice again, older this time, softer. I knew Eli. If you're family, I need to talk to you. She hesitated, heart pounding. Slowly, she climbed the ladder. An old man stood on the deck, hands raised slightly in a gesture of peace. White hair, weathered face, eyes kind but wary. He wore faded jeans and a flannel shirt despite the heat. I'm not here to hurt you, he said quietly. My name's August. I was Eli's friend. She tightened her grip on the crowbar. What do you want? He glanced toward the marina office, then back at her. Not here. Meet me at the diner on Lighthouse Road. 1 hour. If you want to know what your uncle died protecting, you'll come. How do I know I can trust you? He reached into his pocket slowly, pulled out a photograph, handed it to her. It showed 2 young men in Navy uniforms, arms around each other's shoulders, grinning at the camera. One was her uncle. The other was August. We served together, he said. He saved my life in Da Nang. I owe him the truth. And so do you. He turned and walked down the dock before she could respond. She watched him disappear into the mist. Then she climbed back down into the engine room, sealed the crates as best she could, and locked the hatch behind her. 1 hour. She needed answers. But first she needed to make sure no one else knew what she'd found. She drove to the diner with the windows down, trying to clear her head. The wind smelled of pine and exhaust. The radio played softly, some old song about summer and second chances. The diner sat on the corner of Lighthouse Road in Maine, a faded blue building with a neon sign that flickered even in daylight. Inside, it smelled of bacon grease and burnt coffee. August sat in the back booth, hands wrapped around a mug. He looked up when she entered, nodded once. She slid into the seat across from him. A waitress appeared, 60s, gray hair and a bun, name tag that read Doreen. Coffee, hon. She nodded. August waited until Doreen left before he spoke. Your uncle and I served together in the Navy. 1960s. We were assigned to a special unit, transport and security for classified cargo. Mostly gold reserves. Emergency funds in case of nuclear war. She listened. In 1985, someone tried to steal a shipment. Eli stopped them, but the people involved were powerful. Military contractors, politicians, men who couldn't afford to have the theft go public. So they buried it, told the world the gold was lost at sea during a storm. But it wasn't, she said quietly. He shook his head. Eli hid it, moved it onto the Evangeline, kept it safe for 40 years. He was going to return it when the statute of limitations expired. But he ran out of time. Why didn't he tell anyone? He did. He told me. And he left you the boat because he trusted you'd finish what he started. She stared at her coffee. I don't even know what that means. He leaned forward. It means you have 2 choices. Sell the gold quietly, live comfortably and let the lie stand. Or return it, expose the truth, and give your uncle the justice he died waiting for. Her phone buzzed on the table. A text from Carter. Offer expires tonight. $15,000. Final. She showed August the screen. His jaw tightened. He knows. How? Because people like him always do. They've been watching that boat for decades, waiting for someone to claim it. She felt cold despite the heat. Outside, a black SUV pulled into the parking lot. 2 men in dark suits stepped out, scanning the windows. August stood slowly. Go out the back. Don't go home tonight. I'll contact you when it's safe. Wait. But he was already moving toward the front door, intercepting the men before they could enter. She slipped out through the kitchen, past the dishwasher who barely looked up, out the back door into an alley that smelled of grease and rotting vegetables. She ran to her car, hands shaking as she fumbled with the keys. By the time she pulled onto the highway, the SUV was gone. She drove to a motel on the edge of town. A dingy place with peeling paint and a flickering vacancy sign. Paid cash for 1 night. Locked the door. Pulled the curtains. Sat on the bed and stared at her phone. $15,000 would solve everything. Rent, food, medicine. $15 million would destroy her. But her uncle had died protecting the truth. She opened her contacts, scrolled to the number August had written on a napkin before she left the diner. Rebecca Hale. Investigative journalist. Charleston Post. Trust her. She stared at the name for a long time. Then she pressed call. Rebecca answered on the 3rd ring. Hale. My name's, she stopped. Realized she hadn't thought this through. My uncle left me a boat. And I think I found something. Silence on the other end. Then, what kind of something? The kind people kill for. Another pause. Where are you? She gave the motel address. Don't move. I'll be there in 2 hours. The line went dead. She sat on the bed, staring at the stained wallpaper, listening to the hum of the highway outside. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. Heavy breathing. Then a voice low filtered, disguised. You should have taken the money. Her pulse spiked. Who is this? Someone who's trying to save your life. Walk away. Forget what you found. Or you'll regret it. The line went dead. She dropped the phone like it had burned her. 2 hours felt like 2 days. When Rebecca finally knocked, she checked through the peephole 3 times before opening the door. Rebecca was younger than she'd expected. Mid-30s, sharp eyes, messy bun, canvas bag slung over one shoulder. She looked like someone who didn't sleep much. "Show me," she said without preamble. They sat at the small table by the window. She spread out the journal, the blueprint, the photographs. Rebecca read in silence, occasionally taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When she finished, she looked up. Her eyes were bright. "This is real," she whispered. "Do you understand what this means? That my uncle was a thief? That your uncle was a hero? This gold was part of a Black Ops slush fund. When the program got exposed in the Senate hearings, they covered it up by staging a shipwreck. Your uncle saved it from being laundered into illegal arms deals." She felt dizzy. Rebecca pulled out her laptop, started typing. "I need to verify this with Naval Archives. But if it checks out, this is the biggest cover-up since Iran-Contra. What happens to me?" Rebecca stopped typing, looked at her. "You'll be protected. Witness protection if necessary. But you need to decide, are you willing to go public?" She thought of her son, the eviction notice, the $12,000 sitting on the table like a lifeline. "I don't know," she said quietly. Rebecca's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, frowned. "We need to move. Someone just filed a maritime claim against your boat. They're trying to seize it before you can do anything." "Who?" "Maritime Recovery LLC. Shell Company. But I recognize the lawyer's name, Maxwell Lang. He works for Sentinel Defense Contractors. Same people your uncle was running from." Her stomach dropped. "They know." Rebecca nodded. "And they're not going to wait." They moved the gold that night. August met them at the marina with a pickup truck. They worked in darkness, 3 trips back and forth, crates loaded into a climate-controlled storage unit across town under a name Rebecca had arranged. By dawn, the yacht was empty. By noon, 2 federal agents knocked on her motel door. She let them in. "We're here about the Evangeline," the older one said. "Badge Red Agent Morris. We have reason to believe it contains stolen government property." She met his eyes. "Then you're welcome to search it." They did. Spent 4 hours tearing apart the cabin, the engine room, every compartment. Found nothing. When they left, Agent Morris handed her a card. "If you remember anything, call me." She closed the door, waited until she heard their car leave, then called Rebecca. "It's time," she said. Rebecca's voice was steady. "I'll have the story ready by Friday. Are you absolutely sure about this?" She looked at the photograph of her uncle, young, smiling, standing beside Sarah on a sun-drenched deck. "I'm sure," she said, "because some things were worth more than money. Some things were worth the truth, even if it cost everything." Rebecca published the story on Friday morning at 6 a.m. By noon, it had been shared 40,000 times. Hidden Navy gold found on abandoned yacht. Widow exposes 40-year cover-up. The article was methodical, thorough. It included scan pages from the journal, naval manifests Rebecca had obtained through FOIA requests, testimony from August, and a timeline that connected every piece. Her phone started ringing at 6:15. Lawyers, journalists, historians, a producer from a documentary series, someone claiming to be from the State Department. She turned it off. Rebecca arrived at the motel by 8 with coffee and bagels. Naval Archives confirmed the manifests. The gold matches a shipment reported lost in 1985. And 3 of the names in your uncle's journal? Still alive. Still working in defense contracting. What now? Now we wait for them to make a mistake. They didn't have to wait long. By afternoon, Sentinel Defense issued a statement. The allegations in today's article are baseless and defamatory. Sentinel Defense has never been involved in any illegal activity. We are exploring legal action against the parties responsible for these false claims. Rebecca smiled when she read it. They just confirmed they're paying attention. That evening, Carter disappeared. The marina office sat empty, door locked, lights off. No one had seen him since Thursday night. August called. He's running, which means he knows what's coming. What is coming? Justice. One way or another. 2 days later, she received a certified letter. Inside, a summons. Maritime Court. The government was filing a claim to recover the gold as stolen federal property. Rebecca read it over her shoulder. This is good. How is this good? Because it means they're acknowledging the gold exists, which means they have to explain how it got there, which means discovery, which means depositions, which means everything comes out. Can they take it? Probably, but you'll get a finder's fee. Standards 10 to 15% of recovered value. She did the math in her head. 15% of 15 million, $2.2 million. More money than she'd see in 10 lifetimes. But that wasn't why she'd done this. That night, someone left a manila envelope on her car windshield. Inside, photographs of her son, walking to school, playing at recess, getting off the bus. No note, no message, just the photos. She called Rebecca, hands shaking so badly she could barely hold the phone. "I'm going to the police," Rebecca said. "Right now. And I'm calling a friend at the FBI. What if they hurt him?" "They won't. They're trying to scare you into backing down. But we're past that point. The story's out. They can't put it back." She picked her son up early from school, held his hand so tightly he complained. That night, they stayed with August at his house, a small craftsman bungalow near the beach, windows open to let in the salt air. Her son fell asleep on the couch watching cartoons. She sat on the porch with August, watching the moon rise over the water. "You doing okay?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. "I keep thinking, what if I'd just taken the 12,000? What if I'd walked away? Then they'd have one. And Eli would have died for nothing. Maybe that would have been easier. Easier isn't the same as right." She smiled faintly. "He used to say that. My uncle. I know. He said it to me about 100 times." They sat in silence listening to the waves. "There's something I didn't tell you," August said finally. "About Sarah." She turned. "She's alive. Living under a different name in Savannah. Been there since '85. Eli made her promise to disappear, stay hidden until it was safe. Why didn't she come forward? Because she didn't know what Eli had done. He never told her about the gold. Just told her to run and never look back. Does she know now? Rebecca contacted her yesterday. She's willing to testify. About what? About the night Eli died. About the men who came to the boat looking for something. About what they said when they thought no one was listening. Her pulse quickened. She was there. She was hiding below deck. Heard everything. Why didn't she tell anyone? Because they told her if she ever spoke up, they'd kill her family. So she kept quiet, changed her name, waited 40 years. Until now. He nodded. Until now. The next morning, she met Sarah at a coffee shop in Charleston. She looked like the woman in the photograph, older now, gray-haired, but with the same kind eyes. They sat by the window watching tourists walk past with shopping bags and ice cream cones. "You look like him," Sarah said quietly. "People say that. He talked about you. Said you were smart. Said you'd understand." "Understand what?" "Why he couldn't let it go." Sarah wrapped her hands around her coffee mug. "He believed in accountability. In justice. Even when it cost him everything." "Did it cost him his life?" Sarah looked out the window. They came to the boat one night in August. 3 men. One of them was Carter, younger then but the same. They wanted to know where Eli had moved the shipment. Thought he'd tell them if they threatened him. But he didn't. No. He told them to leave or he'd go to the press. So they left. And 3 days later, he was found dead on the deck. "Heart attack," the coroner said. But it wasn't. Sarah met her eyes. "No, it wasn't." "Can you prove it?" "I have a recording. I was hiding below with a tape recorder. Got the whole conversation." Rebecca leaned forward. "You've had this for 40 years?" "I was terrified. Didn't know what to do with it. But I kept it. Just in case." "Where is it now?" "Safety deposit box. Bank of Charleston." Rebecca stood. "Let's go get it." The recording was damning. 3 voices. Carter's, younger, nervous. Another man, calm and cold, giving orders. And a third, older, authoritative. "He won't talk. We've tried everything. Then we need to make it look natural. Heart attack. Stroke. Something clean. And if the gold surfaces later? Then we deal with it then. But Eli Hammond doesn't leave this dock alive." Rebecca made copies, sent one to her editor, one to the FBI, one to the Naval Inspector General. By that evening, arrest warrants were issued. Carter was found in a motel in Alabama, using a fake ID. The other two men, retired naval officers, now defense contractors, were taken into custody at their homes. The third voice on the tape belonged to a man named Victor Lang. He turned himself in the next morning with his lawyer. The arraignment was brief. Conspiracy, obstruction of justice, manslaughter. She sat in the gallery with Sarah and August, watching the men in suits shuffle and wearing handcuffs. Victor Lang looked directly at her as he was led past. She didn't look away. When it was over, they walked out into the sunlight. "It's done," Sarah said quietly. "Not yet," Rebecca said. "There's still the hearing." The maritime hearing took place 2 weeks later in a federal courthouse in Charleston. The room smelled of old wood and air conditioning. Lawyers in expensive suits sat at long tables shuffling papers. She testified first, told the story from the beginning, the inheritance, the note, the discovery, answered every question carefully, honestly. Then August testified. Then Sarah. Finally, Rebecca submitted the documents, the journal, the recording, the naval manifest. The judge read them in silence. When he finished, he looked up. "This court finds that the gold in question was indeed misappropriated federal property. However, it also finds that Mr. Eli Hammond acted in good faith to preserve said property and prevent its use in illegal activities. Therefore, this court awards Ms. Hammond a finder's fee of 20% of the recovered value, totaling $3 million. The room erupted. She sat frozen, unable to process what she just heard. $3 million. Outside, reporters swarmed. Cameras flashed. Questions were shouted. Rebecca guided her through the crowd, August clearing the way. They drove back to the marina in silence. The Evangeline sat in its slip, quiet and still. She climbed aboard one last time, stood on the deck where her uncle had stood 40 years ago. The wind smelled of salt and jasmine. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell rang. She closed her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. And for a moment she felt him there beside her. The settlement check arrived on a Tuesday. $3 million minus legal fees and taxes. She stared at it for a long time before depositing it. That evening, Victor Lang's lawyer called. "Miss Hammond, my name is David Brennan. I represent Mr. Lang. I'd like to discuss a settlement. We already settled. Not with the court. With you personally. Mr. Lang would like to offer you an additional $2 million in exchange for a signed statement recanting your testimony." She laughed. "Couldn't help it. You're joking." "I assure you I'm not. My client is prepared to write a check today. Tell your client to go to hell." She hung up. 5 minutes later, her phone rang again. Unknown number. She answered. "You made a mistake." Victor Lang's voice, cold, measured. "You think you've won. But all you've done is make enemies. Powerful enemies. People who don't forget. Are you threatening me? I'm warning you. Take the money. Disappear. Because if you don't, I can't guarantee your safety. Or your son's." Her blood turned to ice. "If you touch my son, I won't have to. Accidents happen all the time." The line went dead. She called Rebecca, hands shaking. "I'm calling the FBI," Rebecca said. "Right now. What if it's too late?" "It's not. But you need to be careful. Stay with August. Don't go anywhere alone." That night, someone slashed her tires. The next morning, a brick went through August's window. By the end of the week, she'd hired private security. 2 off-duty cops who rotated shifts watching her apartment. Her son asked questions. She didn't know how to answer them. "Are we in trouble, Mom?" "No, baby. We're safe." But she didn't feel safe. She felt hunted. Rebecca published a follow-up article. Witness in Navy gold case receives death threats. FBI investigating. The public response was immediate. Outrage. Demands for protection. Calls for Lang's bail to be revoked. 2 days later, Lang was transferred to a higher security facility. The threats stopped, but the fear didn't. She couldn't sleep. Jumped at every sound. Checked the locks 3 times before bed. August sat with her one evening on his porch. "It gets easier," he said. "Does it?" "Eventually. But the fear, it stays with you. Changes you. I don't want to be afraid anymore. Then you keep living. Keep fighting. That's how you win. She looked at him. Did my uncle win? August smiled sadly. Yeah, he did. Just took 40 years to see it. The trial began in September. 3 defendants. 11 charges. 4 weeks of testimony. She attended every day, sitting in the gallery with Sarah and August. The evidence was overwhelming. The recordings, the manifests, the testimony. One by one, the defendants' lawyers tried to create doubt, tried to discredit the witnesses, tried to suggest the gold had been legitimately salvaged. But the jury didn't buy it. On October 12th, they returned guilty verdicts on all counts. Victor Lang, 20 years. Carter, 15. The third man, 10. When the judge read the sentences, Sarah reached over and squeezed her hand. It's over, she whispered. Outside the courthouse, Rebecca gave a statement to the press. Today justice was served. Not just for Eli Hammond, but for every person who's ever stood up against corruption and paid the price. This case proves that the truth always comes out. It just takes time, and people brave enough to tell it. That night, they celebrated at August's house. Fried shrimp from the docks. Cold beer. Her son running in the yard with August's dog. For the first time in months, she felt like she could breathe. What are you going to do with the money? August asked. She'd thought about it. Set up a foundation, in my uncle's name, to help whistleblowers and their families. Sarah smiled. He'd love that. What about the boat? She looked out at the water. I'm keeping it, restoring it, turning it into a museum. A museum? A floating archive. So people can come aboard, read his letters, understand what he sacrificed. Make sure it never happens again. August raised his beer. To Eli. They clinked bottles. To Eli, they said together. The wind carried the smell of salt and jasmine. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell rang twice. And for the first time since this all began, she felt at peace. 6 months later, the Evangeline returned to the water. She'd hired a restoration crew, craftsmen who specialized in vintage vessels. They'd stripped the hull, replaced the rotted planks, rebuilt the engine, restored the cabin to its 1960s glory. The yacht gleamed under the spring sun, turquoise paint fresh and bright. A small crowd gathered for the rededication ceremony. Local historians, journalists, veterans who'd served with Eli. She stood on the deck with Sarah and August, her son beside her holding a bottle of champagne wrapped in ribbon. On behalf of the Hammond family, she said, voice steady, I dedicate this vessel to the memory of Eli Hammond, a man who believed that some things are worth more than money, worth more than safety, worth everything. Her son swung the bottle. It shattered against the hull, foam spraying across the deck. The crowd applauded. Afterward, people toured the cabin. She'd installed display cases along the walls, the journal, the photographs, copies of the naval documents, the recording equipment Sarah had used. A plaque beside the captain's desk read, The Evangeline, in memory of Eli Hammond, 1942 to 1985. The truth is worth the wait. She gave tours on weekends, told the story in her own words, watched people's faces change as they realized what her uncle had sacrificed. One afternoon, a young woman in navy dress whites approached. I'm here because of the scholarship, she said. She smiled. The Eli Hammond Memorial? Yes, ma'am. It's paying for my degree in naval history. I'm graduating next month. He would have loved that. The woman saluted and left. She stood at the railing watching the water glitter in the sun. Her son ran past, chasing a friend down the dock. The wind smelled of salt and paint and possibility. For the first time in her life, she wasn't struggling, wasn't afraid, wasn't fighting just to survive. She was free, and her uncle's truth had set her free. A year later, the museum was thriving. School groups came on field trips. Historians conducted research in the archive she built below deck. Veterans gathered on the anniversary of Eli's death to share stories. The foundation had awarded its first grants, $50,000 each to 3 families whose loved ones had exposed government wrongdoing. She'd bought a house near the marina, small, yellow, with a porch that overlooked the water. Her son had his own room. His asthma was under control. He was thriving. She sat on that porch one evening in late summer, watching the sun set over the marina. Sarah visited often. They'd become close, more than friends. Family. August had moved into a cottage nearby. They had dinner together twice a week. Rebecca was working on a book about the case. It was already optioned for a documentary. Her phone buzzed. A text from the foundation's director. Just got a call from a woman in Savannah. Says her grandmother left her a property and she found something strange. Wants to know if we can help. She smiled. Send me the details, she typed back. Because the work wasn't done. There were more stories out there. More truths waiting to be told. More people who needed someone to believe them. She looked out at the Evangeline lights glowing softly in the dusk. Her uncle had started something, and she was going to finish it. Not just for him. For everyone who'd ever been silenced. For everyone who'd ever been afraid to speak up. For everyone who believed that some things were worth fighting for. She closed her eyes, felt the salt breeze on her face, and whispered, "Thank you. Some inheritances come with chains. Others come with wings. What did you think of my story? Leave your thoughts in the comments, and rate it from 0 to 10. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell, so you won't miss the next story."